Welcome to episode 430 of the Microsoft Cloud IT Pro Podcast, recorded live on June 15, 2026. This is a show about Microsoft 365 and Azure from the perspective of IT pros and end users, where we discuss a topic or recent news and how it relates to you. In this episode, Ben and Scott explore Microsoft Scout, the new desktop AI application announced at Microsoft Build. They walk through the real onboarding experience on both Mac and Windows, the licensing maze and admin controls needed to activate it, and how Scout's architecture ties together models, automations, and integrations like MCP servers, GitHub Copilot, and WorkIQ. Let's go scout out Microsoft Scout.
Today, we're going to talk about Microsoft Scout, aka Microsoft's new desktop application that interacts with, well, all sorts of things. Traditional skills, like you might be using like Claude Code style skills, like we've talked about in the past, agents, interacts with local file system, web browsers, has WorkIQ integration-ish. I think we should talk about that and kind of how that manifests and comes together. Supports MCP servers, local skills, all sorts of cool stuff. So this was announced at Build, at Microsoft Build a couple weeks ago. So it's in the Frontier program. Customers can go and grab it. Although maybe we should start with, it's both an M365 Frontier thing plus a GitHub Copilot thing for some of the AI usage and all of that. So I don't know where you want to start. I think a good grounding is, like I said, Scout is a desktop application that interacts with cloud LLMs plus your local file system, local web browser, supports MCP integrations, supports skills, both import from GitHub and traditional marketplaces, create your own kind of thing. I think it's got some interesting concepts and things going on that we can spend a little bit of time and talk about. But why don't we talk about onboarding and getting this all going?
Let's start there because I went in to onboard this and it was, I will say it was an interesting experience to onboard this because it's different. It's different. We'll start there. So I downloaded it right away when I wanted to get this set up and start playing with it. And you download the application and start running it. And this is Mac OS. We should also say this is both on Mac OS and Windows already. So when they announced it, came out with it, they came out with it for both platforms. And you're immediately prompted with a Microsoft 365 login and a GitHub login. So I was like, okay, perfect. Let me go log in. And I got blocked right away. I couldn't log in because the documentation on this is mixed. What I have seen is this requires both some level of Microsoft 365 Copilot licensing, because this has to be enabled in Microsoft 365 in order to work. There's some admin controls there. So the first thing I had to do was I had to actually log into Microsoft 365 as an admin and enable it within my Microsoft 365 tenant. So the prerequisites are a Microsoft 365 Worker School account, a Microsoft 365 Copilot access, and an active Microsoft 365 Copilot license assigned to your account, local admin permissions, which that's to install the app, and a GitHub Copilot license. That is 2 Copilot licenses, Scott.
It's Copilot for your Copilot.
It is. So it's going in, logging into the admin workspace, and I was trying to find it right here where it actually was in the admin center, and I lost it in my documentation. But there is, I think it's in the Copilot settings in the admin center. And I am not sure why I'm not finding it here. Admin? Yeah, there's the access setup, admin access overview. Here it is. Documentation is fun. You have to be enabled in Frontier, like you said. Go turn that on and then go. And this is where I would say it's a little mixed in the admin center. The Microsoft guidelines walk you through setting up an Intune policy or a GPO policy. So you could do this through AD to actually enable Frontier on the machines. So there's either a configuration policy that you have to set to enable this or a GPO and it pushes down that registry setting to enable on your device. So you could probably work around that, right? You could go download ADMX files, make changes to your local machine, all of that to get it enabled. Easiest way is Intune or GPO. So I got that pushed down. went to go log into Scout again, and now it's like, okay, you need a GitHub Copilot license. Perfect. I have GitHub Pro, and this is a license I already had for my personal account. And it was like, I had the license, but it said, oh, guess what? Scout does not work with GitHub Pro on a personal one. You need an enterprise GitHub Copilot license. So then I had to go into my organization in GitHub, go purchase GitHub Copilot for my enterprise account. And once I had that for enterprise, now I was actually finally able to sign in. So GPOs, downloading the application, 2 different licenses, one a $30 a month license. The other one I think is $18 or $19 a month. So a cumulative $50 a month in licensing for Copilot between GitHub Copilot and Microsoft 365 Copilot. Now I was finally able to log in and actually start using it.
This is all before you've even said hello world or asked a question, anything like that.
I don't even know what the UI looks like or anything. I had to go set all of this up before it even let me log into the application and get past the initial splash screen once I installed it. It's a little bit of work.
It's a little bit of work, yeah. So a little bit, right? $50 before you even turn it on and download the thing. So why don't we talk a little bit about that initial experience and what that looks like and kind of how it comes together. So Scout's a desktop application again. You kind of want it running 24/7 or as close to 24/7 as you can get, depending on your needs, because it has these heartbeats and automations and other things that you can stand up in it, because it's got OpenClaw-ish, whatever running in the background. So effectively a cron job can go and run and push out your prompts on a schedule. So you get presented with this window that's, okay, I can chat, I've got automations, co-creations, things like that. So why don't we talk a little bit about new chats and what that looks like. So you just go in, you fire up a new chat, you're going to get some light prompts around things like, what should I focus on? Block some focus time with me. Find my chat with my manager or my direct reports, whatever it happens to be, put those together. So you can go basically hello world or start with one of these kind of baked in prompts to get you up and running. You get to select a model that you run with. So there is a model selector. That becomes important because you're going to select a default model as part of your settings. So are you going to run with Opus 4.6, GPT 5.5? Are you going to do Opus 4.8, which came out recently? Or are you going to go into auto mode and let it choose what's out there?
I would say this is another part of the admin thing. We mentioned it. You need the GitHub Copilot license, right? And it's because when you actually go run these, it's consuming GitHub Copilot. And I mentioned this because you brought up these models. The models that you have available to you in Scout are dictated by which models you make available to your organization in GitHub Copilot. So that's another one of those admin pieces once you get in here is, like you said, I have Claude Opus 4.6, 4.8, 4.5, GPT 5.5, 5.3. I don't have any of the Google ones. I could go enable Google in GitHub Copilot, and then those would start showing up here. Or if I wanted to limit GPT or Claude, depending on my models I want available to my users, you can control the model availability, but it's all done through your GitHub Copilot admin settings.
This is a little bit more of that model overload thing, because not only are you paying for GitHub Copilot, but models have different costs for input tokens, output tokens. Basically, what are you going to burn through in token usage on GitPilot, on Scout, as you're kind of chatting and going about your day-to-day that's there. So it is an important cognitive thing, I think, to think a little bit about what the model is. So like I can say with my employer, I'm a little bit lucky in that I get unlimited usage. So I don't worry about token consumption or things like that. But I think in a world of API, per API call, per token kind of pricing, which is very much like the way the world is headed right now, you do need to be intentional and think about that a little bit. What's the best model for maybe your business? If you're a singular business, maybe you think Opus I don't know, 4.8 is better than GPT 5.5, given like the vertical you're in or the place you are. So maybe that's the only thing you make available. Or you make the whole smorgasbord available. You put folks in auto mode and hope they stick to it. Like it's a weird kind of dynamic to get out there. But it is one of those things, given like GitHub Copilot pricing and how that's changed over time, like you do have to think a little bit about what are the models you expose and what are the models that are going to work best for your use cases and your business.
Right. So select the model, first thing. The other thing you can do, I mean, I don't know why you'd want this, Scott, unless you're just having fun with it. We talked about this. This doesn't seem super enterprisey. You can pick your personality for how they respond. Default, helpful and professional. Okay, enterprise makes sense. Enthusiastic intern. So excited about everything. I mean, maybe. But then the other one, and maybe if you're just a child at heart, or you don't get enough of your teenagers that are sarcastic, you can actually choose a sarcastic teenager personality, where Scout will respond to you with eye-rolling and reluctantly helpful responses. To me, that feels a little gimmicky. I don't know. Some people have fun with it. Sarcastic teenager. Maybe you just want to giggle out of your Claude responses. I mean, we do use the Carrot app on whether that can also be a little bit sarcastic, teenagery-ish. But those two things you can pick when you go set up your prompts. This episode is brought to you by Trusted Tech. If you're managing Microsoft 365, you already know licensing isn't simple. E3 versus E5, the brand new E7 licenses, Copilot security bundles, and with price changes coming in July 2026, the stakes are getting higher. Trusted Tech helps IT leaders make sense of their Microsoft 365 environment with a free licensing consultation. Their engineers analyze what you're licensed for and what you're actually using, and where you can optimize, whether that means consolidating security tools, preparing for Copilot, or eliminating wasted spend. Plus, they offer proactive and reactive support, which has been awarded yet another solution partner designation from Microsoft for support services. If you want a clear, data-backed plan that has helped over 7,500 subscribing customers save up to 20% on Microsoft 365 before your next renewal, visit trustedtech.team/MSCloudPro M365 and schedule your free consultation today.
All right, cool. So you go set up a prompt, you fire it off. So like you can ask Microsoft Scout what it can do. I think playing around with some of it, given like the workplace nature center of it, right? It is focused in M365 is what can you do for me in M365? Go read my inbox and give me a stack rank list of my top 3 priorities right now. Kind of thing, which you can totally do because there is that work IQ integration.
There is. And that's one of the prompts when you start that first new chat is you have a button that can click, what does it do? And it'll just auto fill in some text in the chat dialog that says, what can you do? Show me tools and capabilities. And it is what we mentioned, code and repo, working with files, editing code, running build test, lints, working on files in your Scout workspace browser, going through navigating websites, doing Microsoft 365 stuff with all the IQ, OneDrive, Outlook, creating drafts, replies, calendar events. They have skills for documents, PowerPoint decks, different settings. And we'll talk more about this, automations, heartbeat checks, things like that. And then search prior sessions. And then it does give you a few of those specialized skills it has, editing loop pages, docx, PPTX, web artifacts builder for interactive HTML dashboards. So it gets you started there. I think the first thing I thought through, and I would be interested to hear your take on this a little bit, is you spin this up, and obviously it's different licensing, but adding to that cognitive load is now I'm like, okay, now I have Scout. There is a ton of overlap between what Scout can do and what Microsoft 365 Copilot can do. There's also overlap now between what Scout can do and what GitHub Copilot can do. And because of the licensing requirements, in order to have Scout, I now have those other two anyways. Like, how do I start rationalizing? If I'm going to start a chat, do I go into GitHub Copilot? And do I do some of the chat there? Do I go into Microsoft 365 and chat there? Do I go into Scout and chat if I'm working with code? Do I want to be in GitHub Copilot or Scout? In my mind now, there's a lot of overlap. There are a few unique aspects to all of these, but it's just more which Copilot do I use when, and how do I decide where I'm going to go?
I think it's a hard one because every time you're chatting in Scout, you are consuming tokens in GitHub Copilot.
Yep.
That's a weird decision right off the bat because if you're already licensed for M365 Copilot and you're using M365 Copilot under your existing licensing, maybe you're using things like CoWork successfully and you've been able to do automations and skills and things over there, maybe that's enough for you. And you don't need Scout. I think Scout bridges an interesting gap between all of those because M365 Copilot can't interact with your local desktop. So that's a big downside.
That's a big one.
M365 Copilot also does not have MCP integration. So if you're working with an MCP server, like in my case, maybe like even if I want to do something like use like the Microsoft Learn remote MCP, I can't do that from M365 Copilot. I have to go over to something else that's out there. So I don't think the trade-off is the cognitive load of when to use what. The trade-off is how much money do you have and how many token credits do you have? Because the consolidated experience of having both access to your work data via WorkIQ, things like that, plus LLM access, plus local file system, MCP, skill integrations, and the cron scheduler makes it a pretty powerful thing, right? To be able to go and do that. So if you did have access to all of them, I would think about things like, do I need this automation to be scheduled? Yes or no? Well, if I need it to be scheduled, I'll just go run that in Scout because I can set up that automation or I can have a heartbeat that runs on a schedule, have that come through kind of thing. Is it an MCP integration? Well, I can't do that in M365 Copilot. Therefore, I'm going to go into this other tool to spin those things up and get them going. So I found Scout to be super helpful for, like in my day-to-day, building HTML mockups, building reports, having the MCP integrations is really good. Like in my world, like I do a lot with Kusto and Kusto telemetry. So having things like the Fabric, the Microsoft Fabric MCP server there helps me a whole bunch, right? To spin those things up and get them going. There are some trade-offs. So it's like they built in skills for like you said, document creation. So they've got like a docx skill, they've got a PowerPoint skill, things like that, but they're limited. So I don't know if you've played around with any of these. Like I went and created.
I have not.
I went in and I was iterating on a document with Scout, and I don't know what it's using for these skills in the back end. I didn't go dig around on the file system or anything like that. I imagine it's a bunch of NPM kind of just pull in things and use open source components, things like that. But like I was working on a document with it. So it generated doc v1 kind of thing over its iteration over mine. I had the document closed at the time, so I wasn't accessing it. I went and opened up the doc and I had it open and I said, well, let's go make these changes. It couldn't make those changes because I had the document open. So because I had the document open and it couldn't make the changes, guess what it did? It created a new version and it said, hey, I've created a new document with a new name. So I went and opened that document up and I was like, oh, this is a fluke, right? This can't be the way this thing works. I said, okay, let's iterate on the new document. Sorry, document's locked. I can't get access to it, blah, blah, blah. And rinse, repeat, and go down. So there are some limitations or things like that come together, but it's far easier if you do the kind of co-create / workspace experience to put some of these things together. So in my case, like if I already had a bunch of, let's say, CSVs that I extracted from Kusto and I wanted to put those into a Word document or an HTML report, it'd be really easy for me to dump all those CSVs into a single directory, pull that into a co-create session, and then say, hey, go build me this report one-time thing. You just got to know that iterating over it then becomes, well, now I'm using maybe like Copilot inside of Word or inside of PowerPoint, things like that once they're out there and ready to go.
Yeah, in terms of when I use this, one, cost is absolutely part of it. So I just ran that sample query just so people have somewhat of an idea. What can you do? Show me your tools and capabilities. Just one question, I don't know, like 10 words. Here's those responses. And my AI usage in GitHub updates fairly real time. That single question cost me 16 cents in GitHub Copilot. So you can imagine as you would iterate on code and go through tokens, this is not a complex task by any means. It is very easy to burn through dollars in a hurry. You and I did some tests.
That's where you have to be mindful of the model you use.
Yep.
You do have to do things, and I found this to be helpful. So unfortunately, Scout doesn't expose it. But thinking about things like your context window and context rot, just like you would inside of GitHub Copilot chat, GitHub Copilot CLI, Claude Code, all these things. So every time you're starting a new chat, it's a new session. So you can do things like have a long running session. Eventually you have to compact those sessions, or say, if you tell it, you say, hey, save my session so I can go pick it up in a new chat. It'll actually create a session.md or a plan.md, and it'll give you the full file path to it. And then you can go and pull that up and say, hey, go reload this context and push me into a new chat. Things like that along the way. So it's a little weird. Like, you do have to be kind of mindful of where it's at and what it's doing. And is it giving me like the right set of things that are out there? There's also some things that aren't in your control. So if you go into Scout and you try and add the WorkIQ MCP server, you can't, because it says the WorkIQ MCP server is already built in. But when you go and ask a question in Scout, you say, go grab my 3 latest chats from my direct reports kind of thing. You'll see that it actually fires off PowerShell commands. So it's running WorkIQ from the command line, I think, to try and reduce token usage, like in ins and outs and things like that. So that's a pattern you see in a lot of products today, where they're leveraging LLMs, but the LLMs are calling into CLIs. So you kind of see that in action over in things like Scout as you're running it and getting it up and going.
If you're managing file storage today, you've probably felt the pressure. Refresh cycles are harder to plan, costs and complexity are increasing, especially as file workloads scale across regions. That's why Microsoft customers trust Nasuni. As an Azure-certified software, Nasuni provides a global file system designed for enterprise-scale environments, keeping file data secure, governed, and accessible across Azure environments without added infrastructure complexity. It's the foundation to keep your unstructured data stable, even as your infrastructure evolves. To see how much you could save while keeping your initiatives on track, visit nasuni.com/TCO. That's nasuni.com/TCO. It's interesting. I would compare Scout. I would say the times I would go into Scout would be if I'm in Claude land. It would be the times I would normally go in and do something in Claude Cowork. That's how I would compare Scout. Scout is actually what I wish, when Microsoft announced Microsoft 365 Copilot Cowork, I don't know what the official name is. When they announced that Cowork, I was hoping it was going to be something more like what Scout is. I feel like Scout is a little bit more comparable to Claude Cowork than Microsoft 365 Copilot Cowork is to Claude Cowork, just in terms of that functionality, because I use Claude for a lot of the things that I would use Scout for. Going in and pulling stuff out of the browser, interacting with browser sessions, interacting with local files, all of that type of stuff. So that was the chat. You talked a little bit about that co-create experience as well, where you can go set up a workspace, working on files, exporting to docx, creating Markdown, all of that. But you also have in here this automations that you can create within Scout, where now you can go in and create, the way Microsoft describes it, these automated multi-step tasks that run on a schedule. Cron job type of things, where it could be something like the example Microsoft gives. You go in, you create this automation, give it a name of, I want a morning briefing, brief description. This you can pick from those models that are enabled, which model you want this automation to use. So if you have certain automations that maybe through prompts already, you've determined when I'm asking about a morning briefing, it works better with GPT, but when I'm asking about looking at code, it works better with Claude, you can pick what model a particular automation uses and then set it to run on some type of schedule, weekdays at 9 a.m., weekends, end of the day. Or you can set this based on certain conditions and then run a check where every so often I want to check for this condition. I want to check for this pull request in GitHub or a certain repo. And then just go in and set, here's all the steps. Here's the different prompts I want to run as part of this automation. Here's what Scout should do in each one of these steps. Is it going to interact with the browser? You can actually run it with a headless browser, which this is one advantage to me over Claude, is Claude it pops open the browser. Like I'll go in and look at my browser and all of a sudden I have a new group of tabs open from Claude because it went and opened the browser and it added tabs to my browser session. But going in and then doing things with the browser and running it headless if you want to. And then you can go create this automation to now run based on some trigger or some condition to perform a certain set of steps, which this is something I haven't played with. I don't know if you've set up any automations yet.
I've done a couple. So I'll give you some examples of what I do. So I have my heartbeat. So my heartbeat is go check my Teams messages and my inbox for anything urgent from like my team, direct reports, things like that. So my heartbeat runs every 30 minutes during my work hours. So you get to set that up in your heartbeat. You can think of your heartbeat as like the ongoing persistent automation that you want to run. The issue that I ran into with heartbeats initially was the formatting of heartbeats. Like you can go, hey, tell it do this, and then it would always come back with like its own table and its own different format. But because when you're putting these things in, you're effectively like expressing Markdown to the LLM, and LLMs love Markdown, you can actually give it like tabular formats. So, hey, I want it to be formatted this way when it comes back to me. I have these rules for it. So tell me if the heartbeat worked, if it was urgent, if you encountered an error, maybe like a throttle in work IQ, things like that, and couldn't get to it. So that's my heartbeat. And then my automations, I've got a couple different ones that run. The most valuable ones to me are probably the ones that like crawl the web. And so I have one that's, okay, give me the latest tech news from like the top aggregators, like TechMeme, Y Combinator, Hacker News, Reddit, things like that. And it does a pretty good job of giving me like, hey, here's like the top 5 things going on in the news today. It's kind of like my own like little personal newsletter without having to sign up for TLDR or things like that. And then I also have one that does industry specific news. So for like me, I work in object storage land. So I get like a daily briefing of here's what's going on in Alibaba Cloud. Here's what's going on in Amazon S3. Here's what's going on in Google land. And that comes back in like a nice tabular format for me every morning. I've played around with things like create a daily brief, wrap up my day. We were talking about this a little bit. LLM wikis. I tend to be over in LLM wiki land for that stuff now because I've got skills that I've created that I've kind of taken from others and massage, right, to put them where I need to be. But I've got like skills and agents that run in there that are very specific to my workflows. I would love to bring them in to Scout as a harness or something that I could use as a scheduler, but I haven't found a way to do that. Scout can like import skills, but it's got like, I can't point it just like an agent.md and say, okay, go run with this thing and do what you need to do with it. It hasn't quite figured out that or have that level of maturity. Maybe someday like Co-Create gets there. I think that would be like my ideal space is give me something that does MCPs, does skills, brings it all in, brings it together, but then uses like formats like agents.md or things like that. So I can then wrap those skills inside an agent. And then I can use Scout as a harness or a scheduler. So it's not me going into the morning into GitHub Copilot CLI or into VS Code chat and saying, hey, create my daily brief. I could just say, create my daily brief, creates my daily brief, generates that markdown file, and it's there for me on a schedule. Or wrap up my day, and it automatically wraps up my day. I've got like a skill that like, hey, go out and grab the meetings grab all my meetings from my calendar for the ones that I attended, grab the transcripts, make sure you capture action items, bring that stuff forward. Like, I would just love to have that stuff run on a schedule. But I haven't quite figured out how to get it over into Scout land yet. So that's my next thing is I want to figure out like, can I translate some of those LLM wiki kind of workflows bring those over and get them to where they need to be. Because you do have this harness and scheduler that sits there, albeit with one really big caveat. The application needs to be open to be able to do this. So if you close the application, your heartbeat no longer runs, your automations no longer run, anything like that. So I don't know if they turn that into a Windows service or something like that someday.
Or if your computer goes to sleep. It's interesting too, when you're looking at heartbeats, it's here, if you want to do sleep prevention settings, they're in settings and power management. And you can actually go into the settings in Scout and say prevent sleep. So if you have those always on features like the heartbeat active, just don't ever sleep your computer, which, I mean, in theory, this adds another cost too. Now your computer's running 24/7, consuming electricity, generating heat in my office and causing my AC to run more. But that's that other aspect to it. App has to be open, computer has to be running, not sleeping. All of those, you can set your sessions and memories to be stored in OneDrive. So all your chat sessions and memories do get saved into OneDrive by default as well. So those would sync across your devices. So I think this is another nicety of Scout is it does have that ability to keep your sessions, your memories in sync, leveraging OneDrive.
So it writes into a couple different places. Maybe we should talk about this too. So you do get by default a Scratchpad, and your Scratchpad exists inside your OneDrive. So you have what do they call the directory for you? Because I'm on a weird internal build, so it would be called something different for me.
Let me think. Scratchpad was over here. Does it tell me right here?
If you mouse over it, I think it gives you the directory or something like that. But
no, it does not.
So if you go into your OneDrive, it should be like a root folder in your OneDrive. I just don't know if they called it Scout or things like that. So
I don't know either. Copilot. Here's Copilot. Let's go see if I have a Scout one.
Scout or Microsoft Scout.
I do not have Scout. Do I have Microsoft Copilot, Microsoft Teams? I don't see it there either. Maybe, you know what? I don't have any sessions. Do I need to go new chat? Create a presentation about Microsoft Scout. There goes all my GitHub credits, Scott.
You went through 16 cents.
This is $5 to create a presentation. I'll just see where it goes. Maybe we'll have to go find, it might be in the documentation somewhere too. Maybe we should read that.
There's a couple different things that happen here. And there's a little bit of AI fatigue that comes along the way. So much like picking up any other new tool, let's say you go from Claude Code to GitHub Copilot CLI or over to Codex, things like that. You have to migrate sometimes your skills, your MCP integration, or configurations, all those kinds of things. So there's no like Scout and its skills. They get stored in your user directory in a subdirectory called like m_skills, and they'll sit alongside your other marketplace installed skills that maybe you've installed for like Claude Code or GitHub Copilot, things like that along the way. So there you go. Now you got a Microsoft Scout directory.
So it's in Documents. It's in OneDrive Documents in Microsoft Scout, not at the root of OneDrive.
So if you go in there, you'll have Sessions and Scratchpad. The cool thing with Co-Create is you can create, because it's running locally on your desktop, you're not limited to just stuff in your OneDrive. So I think that's another advantage thing. Let's say you were working on like a Git repo and you pulled it down and it was in like C:GitHub kind of thing. You could go pull that into a co-create session and Scout would be able to interact with it. You're not limited like you are in like co-work to just your OneDrive and things like that.
Yeah.
You're out of time. Copilot needs to be deployed ASAP. But is your tenant really ready for it? Years of data, permissions, and users lurk in its shadows, ready to be exposed by AI. ShareGate Protect sees it all, so you can find the exposure risks, fix them fast, and deploy AI with confidence. Microsoft 365 Governance. We got this. Learn more at sharegate.com/governance.
I'm giving it all kinds of permissions. It's running scripts and installing stuff on my computer. And
you're in like NPM land now, dude. It's pulling in all the things to create a PowerPoint presentation and get it going. So eventually you'll get that.
It'll show up here eventually at some point in time. Anything else we want to talk about Scout?
We talked about kind of heartbeats and automations. We should talk through maybe extensions real quick. So I mentioned that you've got both MCP servers and skills available to you. So you can go in, add MCPs, just like you would add any other MCP server. Is it a remote, local? You give it a name, things like that. When I was doing mine, because I had already migrated a bunch of MCPs from GitHub Copilot chat to GitHub Copilot CLI, because the formatting is different for the string formatting's different for the JSON. I was able to actually just pull over my I created one MCP server. I found out where the configuration sits on my hard drive for Scout. And then I just kind of copy paste my actual JSON over, and that lit up Scout and worked pretty good. Skills are interesting because when you go to add a new skill, it kind of directs you into the single markdown file skill world where you give it a description, you give it a name, and you put your instructions in there. You can also import skills from GitHub. So from a skills marketplace.
From an MD. Okay.
But not just a single MD. If you're importing from a plugin marketplace, let's say you have a skill that has a subdirectory for references or design MD, things like that, it'll import all that stuff too and pull it over. So it's not just single markdown skills, which I think is another benefit over M365 Cowork, because M365 Cowork is still very much like files in my OneDrive or SharePoint, single markdown skill, not a collection of artifacts, could be scripts, references, anything like that's going to come along the way there. And then once you have these skills and MCPs integrated, you can do the same thing you do in other tools where you can turn them on, turn them off. So if you're trying to prevent context rot, okay, I'm not going to fire up a bunch of skills in this given session, things like that. You do have the ability to go and play with those a little bit. Maybe one last thing we should talk about. I mentioned WorkIQ and that integration and how it kind of shells out to PowerShell, things like that. We were going back and forth on a thread with somebody else about WorkIQ pricing, which was all new to me. I was like, what did they do here? And APIs for WorkIQ. So that's another consideration for you here as well. If you are deploying this, it's not just your M365 Copilot license. It's not just your GitHub Copilot license. It's also things like WorkIQ API pricing that could come back and get you.
We'll put a link to that because that was new to me as well, was some of the usage-based, consumption-based pricing on some of the WorkIQ stuff, that it appears there's a lot of stuff going to consumption-based pricing. Like AI is expensive, Scott, and people that use a lot of it are going to have to pay more.
I think we are leaving the days of subsidized pricing. So kind of the bundled all-in kind of thing was nice while it was there. Clearly, this stuff's at the point now where it's costing not only the companies that make it real money, but also their providers and everybody else that surrounds them. So as the checks become due, that turns into pricing dynamics changing for consumers. Hey, we all got a taste of it, but now it's going to kind of go out there and cost something. And I think you're seeing that very much manifest with the shift in GitHub Copilot pricing that's happening right now. There's a lot of people who were living in a land of, hey, I was able to do all this cool stuff without recognizing how much it actually cost on the back end because it had been masked in kind of all-in pricing versus consumption-based billing dynamics.
It looks like I ran this. I don't know. Have you tried this, Scott, where you start a prompt to create a file and then leave and go over to a chat and then go back to the co-create? It looks like when I left, it just kind of quit.
No, I haven't had that happen, but I don't think I've flipped back and forth between them.
All right. I'll play with it some more. But yeah, it is. The usage-based pricing is going to be fascinating, maybe scary, not something I'm going to want to watch, but definitely something everybody has to start paying attention to because more and more of it is showing up. And Scott, I was able to add our podcast MCP server. We didn't tell everybody that. I created a podcast MCP server.
You don't want to tell everybody that. That's going to cost you money. Now
money.
You are, you're one of the AI providers.
I'm one of the AI providers now. No, there is one out there as long as it doesn't get too expensive. But we have sponsors. Maybe we can use some sponsor money to provide this added benefit to listeners. There is an MCP server for the podcast that I created, and it is free for now because not many people use it, but not many people know about it. So we can put a link for that in the show notes if people want to try it, if you're listening.
Oh, do you want to do that? You're going to have random AI agents coming at you.
Well, it's already out there. I was optimized. So all of this came out. This is the after show, maybe a little bit. All of this came about because Cloudflare has a new tool to check for your websites, AI agent readiness, like the whole SEO, SEO, AEO, all the engine optimizations. And one of them was like, oh, you can go add these DNS entries and point it to an MCP server, and it helps with all your engine optimizations so people can find you now, and they have a tool to check for that. And it was like, oh, maybe I should create an MCP server, which led me down a huge rabbit hole one day of creating an MCP server. That's hosted on Cloudflare, and for now I'm under the quota, so it's free.
Living the best life.
Yeah. So it is MCP server, or MCP, mcp.msclouditpropodcast.com/MCP, because we needed MCP in there twice. I needed a subdomain and it added the /MCP. So it is what it is.
Yeah. It's going to,
Go play with Scout and add the podcast MCP server to it.
I think Scout's going to be an interesting one. Clearly, there's a desire to kind of have better desktop integrations, better schedulers, and things like that. So I'm very much aligned with you in that this is kind of like what the GitHub or what the M365 Copilot plus Cowork experience could kind of be. Like I could see it going this way. Like there are very tangible benefits to having skills and access to skills marketplaces and MCPs and all those things, and access to multiple models and kind of user choice and all of that comes with it. It'll be interesting to see what the next, I guess, agentic experience is that's pushed out. Is that built into Scout, or is that another separate tool kind of thing? Like, where does that investment go, and what does that look like? That'll be an interesting one.
Yes, it absolutely will.
Yeah, you're going to be fighting with this thing all day as you type over there. It doesn't look like you created the presentation.
Yeah, you failed. AI.
You failed.
You're right. I hadn't finished the actual deck yet. I'll generate it now instead of just dramatically preparing to. Snarky teenagers.
That's a weird mode. I don't know that I understand that one, but maybe some folks on the product team have some really snarky teenagers and they just enjoy that. I don't enjoy the snark from my teenagers, so that's not a me thing.
Yeah, who knows? And it starts everything with ugh. Every single prompt when it's snarky teenager is ugh. Do I have to? Do you really want me to do this?
A deep sigh.
All right.
Yeah, so I'd be interested in other folks' experiences with Scout. Are you building cool automations? Did you find a nifty heartbeat? Things like that work for you. It's a super flexible tool. So if folks do have access to it, I'm pretty sure you can play around and do some interesting things in your daily workflow and day-to-day that you can't necessarily manifest in some of the other tooling that's out there.
Absolutely. So if you are using it, let us know. Let us know how you're using it, different ideas, or other things you want us to talk about. Probably LinkedIn. Go find us on LinkedIn. Look for this episode post there. Add a comment. Give us your feedback, thoughts, ideas, tools, etc. But with that, I will let you go enjoy the rest of your day, Scott. Unless Scout is doing everything for you today.
It's not. It's just more meetings. More meetings, more trouble, more problems. That's how it goes.
Go enjoy those meetings. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Will do. Thanks, Ben.
All right. Thanks, Scott.
If you enjoyed the podcast, go leave us a 5-star rating in iTunes. It helps to get the word out so more IT pros can learn about Office 365 and Azure. If you have any questions you want us to address on the show or feedback about the show, feel free to reach out via our website, Twitter, or Facebook. Thanks again for listening and have a great day.